Welcome to Property Showcase, the podcast that brings you closer to the service providers that can inform your decisions about how you buy, manage and research top investment opportunities. Be informed and become a better investor with Property Showcase.
Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. I'm your host for today. My name's Alex Whitlock, sometimes appear on the SPI show. I barged in and wanted to get involved in this showcase today for very selfish reasons. I'm a property investor. Got in excess of 20 properties in my portfolio. I use a property manager for all of them, and I believe very strongly in property management. So when I heard that Mark Trowell was going to come along and join us today from Yabonza, I was very, very keen to get a chance to catch up with him to have a look at a platform which is pretty revolutionary in the property management space. It purports to offer all the services that a traditional property manager would offer, but at a significantly lower cost and based on a fairly sophisticated tech platform. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, look, let's just first of all kick off. Before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts of the platform, what was it that took you into looking to create something as an alternative to traditional property management for Australian investors?
Yeah, I'd had my own personal experiences with my own investment properties. And apart from that, I was also I've been for the last 27 years really involved a lot around sort of property management, property itself, my own investment journey, and also a lot to do with real estate technology, having previously worked for one of the investment banks who banks 40% of the property real estate agents in the country, and seeing really at a very in-depth level where those businesses go wrong.
So for me as an investor, as I said, sort of when we got going, I use a property manager. I believe very strongly in property management. I think it's each their own, but I think there can be many pitfalls in looking at self-managing. There can be many frustrations. Look, the obvious attraction for investors is you want to save yourself a few dollars. One of the benefits of using a property manager is I know that the property manager will take care of everything for me, getting the property listed, dealing with the open house, routine inspections. Now for Yabonza as a platform, I'm just trying to get my head around how do you manage to give your clients, investors like me, all of these services at a lower rate, but without being a sort of a national traditional property management business?
Yeah, it's a good point that you'd actually touched on there around self-managed. That's one thing that it's not self-managed. And it's an interesting point to distinguish because what we've actually done here is looked at where the value actually sits. And a lot of the time, a lot of people miss that value around the relationship. So we've really turned that around to say, okay, how can we ensure that we can operate everywhere without being anywhere effectively and really have people on the ground wherever we need them? But how can we look at the services different? And then really at the end of the day is how do we offer more value to you as the landlord? So how do we build that relationship? And actually what we've actually done in our business is brought in the concept of a Yabonza asset manager. So that person's sole goal there is to service you as a landlord, regardless of where your property sits.
This is a term that I love because at the end of the day, and I think one of the missed opportunities in traditional property management is it's not really property management, it's asset management.
Yep.
You are managing an asset. This is something that investors like me hold great stock in the future for future wealth, for an opportunity to retire. So I love the term asset management.
Yeah, and that's what we really wanted to focus on. It's your asset. It's not a problem anymore. So traditionally, a lot of property managers, and I feel for them, a lot of them are overworked because they've got so many functions they've actually got to carry out. And if we break that down and go, okay, we could democratize those services, put them into more specialist areas and focus them as an individual task. And then as you as a landlord say, well, what do you want from your property journey? Are you looking to create capital growth? Is it income? Is there other things that we can do to extract further value for you? Versus just trying to stick up the rent when we can. Some of that may even be able to say we need to bring down the rent for a certain period to reduce vacancy factors. There's a plethora of tools, I guess, out there available to us as relationship managers or as asset managers that can increase your ROI over time.
So so I can get some sort of scope on the range. And for people who are listening who are maybe at that point of their journey where they're looking to appoint a property manager, just tell me whereabouts. Are you a metro-based business? Whereabouts do you cover? Are you just sort of Sydney-centric?
We're everywhere. So everywhere in Australia. And
everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
Absolutely.
So I could name any suburb and you've got coverage.
Go for it.
All right. You've got me convinced. How do you do that? That's pretty remarkable.
So one of the things we had to do was really tap into what we call that on-demand workforce or gig economy. So there is a lot of what we call ex-property managers out there, or people who are actually willing to carry out those individual tasks that are what we call physical attributes of managing the property, or something that is needed to be local to the property. And those are holding keys, running open for inspections, running property condition reports and routine inspections. So we tap into that network right the way across the country. It wasn't easy to start that up. I'll be honest with you, there's always teething problems in getting that going, but we've just run through a 12-month, what we call foundation phase, and we've successfully come out the back of that where we've built this network right the way across Australia. In the UK, we have a similar thing, but they've already been micro businesses that have sprung up around some of those adjacent services that are quite effective. So it's enabled us to actually manage properties in London from our office here in North Sydney with 0 people on the ground over there.
Now, I've got a portfolio that spans a number of states. I got quite a shock when I bought my property down in Hobart. The agency that I dealt with there was looking for an 8.5% management fee. I've got other places. I've just recently settled on a place in Newport where the agent is looking for a 5.5% fee. Mm-hmm. How do your fees break down state by state? What's the difference?
They're the same wherever they are. 3.9% inclusive of GST. 3.9%.
So even if I engaged you in Hobart,
yep,
3.9%.
3.9%. We have properties down in Launceston at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're all at 3.9%.
I wish I spoke to you a couple of years ago.
You can bring them across.
So let's just look at the process now. So let's say I decided that I want to either switch a property. Let's say I've got a new investment. What is the process? How do I work with Yabonza? What's the process for me as an investor?
Look, there's many channels. Obviously, you can go online and find us online and then submit an online inquiry, in which case our Yabonza asset managers can follow you up with a call, find out what you're actually looking to achieve and where your property is, and then we can start that process for you. One of the things that we're looking to do, or we actually have done, is make it as seamless as possible for you to move across to us.
Okay, so how does that work? So if I already have maybe a portfolio in a couple of different areas, or maybe just one property, how easy is it to move across?
All it requires from you is a signed management agents agreement and a letter of authority, and we do the rest. Okay. We'll contact your previous agents. We'll then start the onboarding process with them. Typically, it takes between 30 to 60 days, depending on your existing contract that you have with your property manager.
Okay. So let's say, so look, the fees are certainly very, very competitive. I don't have anything anywhere near 3.9 on my properties. And so I assume that me as an investor, I get some sort of dashboard to look at?
Yep, that's correct. You'll get a log into the Yabonza portfolio. From there, you'll see literally everything that's going on. One of the things that we've been really conscious of in creating this whole platform is solving a lot of those problems that kind of exist where people are saying, I don't know what's going on, I can't see what's happening, I'm not being communicated with. So what we've really ensured that is there is as much transparency and communication as possible. So everything that actually gets done on your property is actually logged into the platform, plus all your property details, any documentation that you have around that property, everything is there for you to actually go in. You can see what's happening. You can bring down documents as you need.
Now, I know that one of the things that investors, certainly with more than one property, will be thinking is about collection of rent.
Yep.
This is a challenge, Just tell me about how Yabonza goes about taking rent. Where does it go once it's collected?
It goes straight to the landlord.
Straight to the landlord.
So it goes straight. So that's one of the things that we've been working on for quite a bit of time is really, we launched obviously in our early days with trust accounts to follow the legislation. So that we're legislatively compliant in terms of the platform and the way we operate with landlord ledgers, tenant ledgers, receipts and all that sort of stuff. So you've got a payment gateway, the same as you'd have with PayPal via eBay. Is that sort of deal?
Absolutely,
it's the same sort of thing. So we've got our own internal payment gateway that we own, and we're actually able to take from many sources. So if you've got one tenant or you've got many tenants in your property, we can actually take individually, we can split the rent between them, we aggregate that amount up, and then we can pay that down to the landlord, net of any disbursements that need to be made.
Mark, you've got me sold. How do our listeners get involved in Yabonza? Tell me the simple steps for getting switched over.
Easiest step is you actually go to our website, yabonza.com, and you'll be able to submit an online inquiry from there and we'll pick it straight up.
Mark, it's been great talking to you. I strongly suggest you go and check out the website. I have to say, when I did a quick sort of look over before catching up with Mark, I was fairly staggered at the cost effectiveness of this platform. Really is pretty remarkable. So go check it out. It's yabonza.com.
Yep, that's right.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, Mark.
No worries. Thank you.
Our guest on the show today is Paul Glossop, a regular guest on the show. Actually, Paul is the founder and director of Pure Property Investment. Hello, Paul. How are you? And welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Very well, mates, and thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, there's a bit of a development on your side. You've written and published a book all about property investing. I've had a quick squiz through it earlier. Nice theme that runs through. It's all about surfing.
It is, mate. It's probably a little bit more of a side bias way to theme up a book, but it's a surface guide to property investing, it was something that was a bit of a brainchild of mine about 18 months ago, where I got to the point where property was and is pretty much my vocation and is my life. But surfing over the last 2 or 3 decades since I started has been a big part of what shaped my mindset and what I value and time and also other things with my life as well. So the thought came to me, well, they're both one and the same for me. And I thought being able to build a bit more of a brief book on all the different chapters that can relate to surfing, can relate to property investing, to relate to goal setting, to relate to how to live your best life, ended up being a year's worth of a project and equated to about 50,000 words and 250 pages of a book, which a publisher, and a quick shout out to Major Street Publishing, who were really, really excited to actually take on the book and publish it for me. So it's been an amazing journey.
It's fantastic. And it's a real achievement also to put those words down and actually get them published in a book. A lot of people have that idea, but not everybody gets it done.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. But I tell you what, there's probably no doubt at least a dozen times where I looked at it, maybe a chapter or maybe 3 chapters or 5 chapters in, where I thought, I can't be asked anymore. I'm done with this because life just gets in the way. But it's kind of got to the point of, like, as you know better than most, mate, training for a marathon as an example, it's not something you can do in a day.
Exactly right.
And you know that you have to plan a long way out to get an outcome. And for me, it was sort of saying, well, I've got this far. I can stop, but ultimately it got to the point where I was saying, this is part of me. I want to really just keep pushing and share the story. So it was a time consuming, but it also reiterated a lot of what I know, and to be able to put it into a book that has chapters. So now I find that every time I pick it up and I look through the chapters of trying to set the mindset, trying to learn about how to, really do the proper groundwork, and all the way going through to picking locations, investment types, renovations, house and land, commercial property, right through to things like the secrets to building long-term wealth, and then all the way through to exit strategies. They built themselves as the book grew as well. And I kind of found that you kind of kept adding layers. And eventually I thought, wow, this is a really, really solid, robust story, but it's probably a little bit of a biography of me selfishly as well, because I just related to how it's worked in my life rather than prescriptively or PhD, this is the way that property investment works. Because the truth is, every property investor you ever speak to has a different story of how they got to where they did. And you can't necessarily say that there is a blueprint for everyone to follow to get success.
And good days and bad. And that's what I like about the theme of the surfing, the analogy of the surfing. Good days and bad. Sometimes the surf is big. Sometimes there's no swell. Sometimes it's all chopped up. Sometimes it's really good. And everybody has different styles. Everybody has a different way of riding a wave,
Massively.
I guess.
Yeah, exactly, mate. And I love it because everyone who thinks about the actual theme as well has their own connotation. Exactly. And I love it because the way you've just said it then is it's exactly right, is that the way I surf is completely different to the next person, completely different to the person who doesn't surf at all, but has a different thing that they love, whether it's a hobby, a sport, a pastime. You can always relate it to what it is. And instead of being a surfer's guide to property investing, it can be a runner's guide to property investing. It can be a triathlete's guide to property investing. It can be a baker's guide to property investing. Yeah. There is always something that people can relate to and say, I can understand how I'd put my life or put my own position into this book. And then I can follow the guidance as well as different chapters and try to pick what fits for me and how that's going to shape the ability for me to build my property portfolio over the years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just a quick sort of, without giving anything away, if somebody was to read that, or when people read that, what are they going to get out of it? What are the things they're going to learn?
I think predominantly the first thing they're going to get is how to figure out what their mindset is and what kind of investor or what kind of life that person really wants to live. And that's not just for the 20-year-olds who are just trying to figure it all out. This is all the way through to people who are just about to retire or have retired and trying to figure out what's important to me. So the first part, and we spend a lot of time on mindset, and then it goes right down into understanding all the different investment types that are available out there and what the pros, cons, and indifferences are between them, and figure out how each one of those fits you as a particular investor once you figured out what your mindset is. And then lastly, I think if I was to summarize in the third section is to say, well, how do you get to the nirvana, which is living your best life using property investment as the vehicle? And that can include things like exit strategies, pay down strategies, development opportunities, how to create cash flow. So that's the part that we really focus on at the end. So you're going to get mindset, you're going to get investment types, and then you're going to get the actual exit strategies on how to create what everyone talks about, which is a passive income or a flexible life, because you've got an income generating from your portfolio.
It sounds really good. It sounds really something that everybody should be reading. If anybody wants to learn more about it and how to get their hands on it, where do they go from here, Paul?
Yeah, I'm actually allowing every Smart Property Investment Show listener, podcast listener, to get a free copy at the moment. So we're doing a special where if anyone jumps onto Pure Property Investment's Facebook page, they just tap the message button. If they punch in from there the words Smart Property, they'll get all of a sudden the opportunity to just literally hit a button order the book for free, and we'll put a paperback copy in the post for anyone who does want to actually go and grab yourself a free copy of the book. So Pure Property Investment Facebook page, hit message, tap the word Smart Property.
Fantastic, Paul. Very generous of you, and all the best for that.
Thanks very much, Tim.
Cheers.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.